We are continuing with Jibran from QWorld. Under QWorld, we already started QCourses. Indeed, I and Jibran was taking care of it. I already did a few presentation on it. Now Jibran will present. Personally, I'm also curious how he will explain and interpret what's going on. Jibran, stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abu. Does it sound okay?
Yes.
All right. So thank you, everyone, for tuning into the talk today. I'm Jibran, a member of QWorld and also of the Q Education Department in QWorld. And I'll be talking to you about QCourses. And as Abu mentioned, it was something that was an initiative of QWorld from last year. And I think it nicely links to the talks that we've been having in the sessions. So the key motivation of QWorld, the goal, as I understand it, and that's close to my heart as well, is to have an open access and public global ecosystem for quantum technologies and quantum software. And I've especially made bold the open access and public kind of part, because I think that's likely crucial. And I'll spend a little bit of time in the beginning to kind of give a more personal kind of perspective on it. You may differ on it. So I recall when I started out in early 2000s as an undergrad and figuring out which research area to choose from, there was very little kind of understanding of, hey, is quantum information and quantum computing really going to be something practical? Sure, we knew about Shor's algorithm, but everyone joked about in research meetings that, oh yeah, we can only factor 15, so it's not going to be something that that is going to have practical consequence anytime soon. And I think that's something that's really shifted in the last decade or so, where people now expect that, no, we can really expect quantum computers to really pan out, even though, sure, there is an academic debate to be had over there as well. So one key kind of joke that I remember from the early 2000s is when ID Quantique and similar other companies went commercial and started offering the first practical kind of quantum key distribution and crypto applications commercially. There was a conference, I think it was one of the first QIPs, and so from the booth from ID Quantique, people had a discussion later on about, did anyone buy something from you? And the response was no. But everyone was interested in whether someone else bought something from us. And I think that kind of summed up the perspective at that time, like, hey, is it going to be interesting? Is someone else going to use it? As opposed to now, it's really commercial, or possibly commercial. And with that commercial kind of interest, I think one aspect that becomes crucial to think about, that may or may not be different in terms of how it pans out compared to how classical computing worked out in the 1960s and so on. So there's this nice history that we understand in terms of how innovation occurred regarding classical computing, not necessarily just in Silicon Valley, but in other places as well. But the idea is that key great ideas and key contributions could come from people just working kind of not necessarily in great labs with great big funding, but at a relatively small scale, but with nice innovative ideas. Sure, you had IBM back then as well, but you had people working in garages to make HP, et cetera, as well. And I think most people would agree that at least definitely from the quantum hardware part, perhaps not in the software, that remains to be seen, we don't really expect a large-scale quantum computer to be developed from someone's garage. Maybe in Silicon Valley or maybe somewhere else, right? I would be very happy to be proven wrong on this. Maybe 50 years down the line, when quantum computing does become really practical, it is common to have quantum computers like classical computers today. So this begs the question in terms of how we will have kind of knowing what we know now, knowing the additional tools, the additional technology that has been developed in terms of how we do open science, how we can do open science, how do we use that infrastructure and that framework to make sure that the research and the science that's done regarding quantum computing and related fields is done in a more kind of open fashion rather than just being dictated by the economics of it. And towards that goal, QWorld has been, I think, in some sense doing its share by offering a bunch of educational workshops. They are introductory workshops, but still there have been quite a few offered. Lots of people have taken them. Lots of people, as has been discussed earlier yesterday regarding the QIntern projects, people have been doing research as well. But obviously much more needs to be done as well. And so I'll focus more on kind of the academic education part of it. We have done these workshops, but naturally, if you've been a part of these workshops are great, but they're relatively still informal compared to a classroom setting. And it's difficult to assess whether or not the learning outcomes that were expected from the content that was taught were actually achieved. And so towards that end, what QWorld did is that in fall 2021, we offered our first fully online graduate level course in quantum computing that essentially amounted to a combination of our two of our main popular workshops, Q Bronze and Q Silver. The course was offered in such a way that it was in collaboration between QWorld and University of Latvia, where Abu is. So the idea is anyone who successfully completed the course would get an official kind of certificate from the Faculty of Computing at University of Latvia. Right, so it's one level below getting an official transcript from the University of Latvia, because anyone who is an academic would understand that that would mean that university administration and management comes in and says, hey, you need to pay money to get an official transcript. So what we were able to manage is just one, I guess, one level below that you get an official kind of certificate from the University of Latvia's Faculty of Computing department saying that, hey, this was an actual course offered at University of Latvia in collaboration with QWorld, and here's the details of that course. And what people could do then is basically take that certificate and go to their local university, wherever they are enrolled, and potentially get credit for it. And that's something I'll speak more about later. In fact, something that we did was to actually cross-register this course with my local university at Karachi as well. So the idea is, even though Abu is the one who's teaching the course every week online, I'm kind of also getting a free ride in some sense by having this course being offered registered at a local university in Pakistan, such that students who are registered at that university get to take this entire online course while getting a transcript from University of Latvia, while also getting for sure credit from the local university as well. So in some sense, it avoids potential issues from the student side in terms of getting credits later on. Some of the funding was provided by the Unitary Fund for the course. And so the course itself, I won't go in all the details because Abu has given a much more detailed talk about the statistics of the course previously. The course was roughly broken up into two components. One is kind of the normal standard lecture phase, and then there was a project phase. The 70% of the course credit came from the lecture phase and 30% from project. The application process was interesting. It was completely open, completely online. We did not want to make it a free-for-all, right? So there needed to be at least some work that you need to do in order to get into the course. And so what we ended up on agreeing on was that if you want to enroll in the course, you should at least be a university level student, although there were some exceptions made at the end in exceptional cases. And so the idea is either you provided a proof of enrollment, of you being registered at a university somewhere in the world, and the fact that you've taken courses at that university that satisfy the minimum requirement of the course, which roughly amounts to you understanding linear algebra and intro to programming. Or there were lots of similar cases where people either have graduated a long time ago or have been working for a while, so they are not at a university, but definitely meet the prerequisites of the course. And so in that case, we asked them to provide a support letter from any faculty member or any reasonable person who would be in an official position to provide reference for that person. Although in the end, it still ended up being slightly informal. So we had nearly 370 applications, and out of them, we accepted nearly 270. The odd 100 applications that were not accepted were essentially because of the case that one of the required proof of enrollment or support letter was not provided. At the local IBA, so that's the local Pakistani university where this course was cross-registered, there were about 13 students who registered for the course, out of which 9 kind of stayed till the end. I'm still trying to figure out what were the difference in dynamics of people who kind of took this cross-registered version of the course because they had some local resource available as well in terms of me being available to them versus the completely online version. But that's an analysis that still remains to be done. As I mentioned, the course content itself was divided between the lecture phase was the Q Bronze and the Q Silver content, which roughly amounts to a standard traditional intro to quantum computing course. Naturally, because of our focus on hands-on kind of experience, It's not just traditional lectures. Based on the lectures, people were expected to also work on the programming notebooks that we have with Q Bronze and Q Silver. And so the way it worked out on a weekly basis is that on Mondays, Abu would deliver a lecture from roughly an hour to 90 minutes. Tutorial/programming recitations were held on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and we would follow that up on a Thursday to really make the experience like a graduate level course by having some online talk delivered by some quantum researcher. And on a need basis, we would also have a Q&A session with instructors and TAs if needed. As you'd see, the statistics of the course in terms of how the students performed is roughly what you would expect. The latter part of the course is from Q Silver, which has to do with Shor's algorithms. We note that the average scores are slightly lower, if not across the board. We started out with accepting 270 applications. By the end of the course, roughly 100 students completed the lecture component of the course, right? So that's about out of 270, 100 students who by the end were coming in regularly or viewing the recordings regularly and doing the exercises. In case they missed some of the assignments and whatnot, there was the ability to drop the lowest score from the quizzes, make up by doing a bonus quiz and whatnot. As you can see, the statistics in terms of where the students came from and in terms of their age was also very nicely distributed. And so that's something I really like, because it ends up, although naturally there's a slight bias towards some areas, but then it becomes kind of a nicely global offering of the course rather than to one specific geographic version. Overall, the students did enjoy the course. For sure, there is room for growth. And I definitely like kind of the feedback that even though it's an online course, and at least from my local university, the feedback from students had been not just over the last 2 years that online education isn't really working for them, but for this specific course, the majority of the feedback was really that online training worked for them. Even though most of the students are really taking it for free, right? So there is this issue of, hey, I'm taking it for free, so I can do it anytime. But 100 students really stuck it out till the end, did all the work, even in that mode. So that's something that's a nice result, I think. However, for the project phase of the course, which was for 1 month, there are some things that could definitely improve. So out of the 100 students, there were 57 projects that were initiated. Out of those 57, 32 projects were completed. From those 32 projects, there were 22 projects that were done by individuals. So, we note that how the course didn't really enable students to really develop interactions among themselves and, start collaborative projects. Rather, it was most students basically individually duking it out. And that showed up in terms of kind of the performance on the projects as well, where perhaps ideally what one might expect in such a course offering is people with different backgrounds really come together and work on something interesting together where they complement each other. While it definitely did happen in a couple of projects, perhaps we could have done more to improve that, and that didn't happen. And towards that end, Abu has been offering a follow-up project-based course only, QCourse 570 during the spring. And so that's about to finish up, but I won't speak about that course for the moment. And I'll speak more about how what's a learning from QCourse 511 and what do we expect to do moving forward. So as you can see, while overall the feedback from students is yes, the course was delivered well enough, but there's room for improvement. And so towards that end, I'll identify 2 different things that we'd like to do for our next offering of the same course in fall 22. So as I mentioned, applications were kind of informal. We'd like to make that a bit more formal by developing a better collaboration with universities that would like to cross-register this course. And that might be at many different places, right? So maybe you're a faculty member who is hearing this talk as well. The details of this are still going to be worked out. Hopefully this is something that we'll finalize over the summer and finish in the summer as well. However, the idea is if a faculty member at some university somewhere in the world is interested in offering this course at their local university, rather than them reproducing all that work again locally at their university, what should be possible for them is to have a cross-registration of this course with the global offering of it. And so if you're interested in having such a cross-registration done, please do reach out to me on Discord and we can have a conversation. then naturally this requires a lot of work up front in advance, right? So there might be additional administrative deadlines and requirements to meet at the department levels at the university. It was relatively painless for me. I just essentially just ended up contacting my local administrative body in the department, provide the details of the course, and they were more than happy in allowing for such a course. The key change that happened in this offering is the deadline of Q course grade submission was different than the grade submission of the course of the semester locally that I had at my university, and the university was more than happy to have that flexibility that for this specific course, the grades can be submitted later. This naturally, if done properly, will help in creating a better applicant pool as well, because rather than vetting the applications at one central place, every faculty member can review the applications coming in kind of from their local area, and so that might lead to a better review process for the applications as well. And this allows us to just in general create a better connection of QCousins and different universities as well that engage in developing such a collaboration on a larger level. And I'll speak more to that soon. And the second thing that we'd love to get your help on is to create more material for the course and future courses. So what we are planning to do is, rather than having the project phase of the course as 1 month at the end of the course, have more of a self-study component at the end of the course, where the idea is we do have some material provided to students. Some material that QWorld already does have access to is, for example, the QNICL workshop material that hasn't really been offered, but is prepared. Similarly, there's material on quantum key distribution, optimization, open quantum systems, etc. And so this is material that will be provided to students for them to pick and choose. Kind of, hey, some students might say, hey, I'd like to learn more about quantum foundations. That wasn't discussed in the lecture phase of the course. Someone else might say, hey, optimization is kind of something much more practical and of interest to me, so I'll choose that. But now we kind of go away from one of the challenges that the project phase faced, where people said, hey, I want to mentor for my project. Rather, we have some self-contained introductory material for that specific topic, which the students are then expected to build up on their own, learn on their own. And so that 1 month project phase will be replaced by a self-study component, where students will have the possibility of choosing from a set of different topics. And then for each of those different topics, we will have some form of lead who will identify what are the requirements of finishing up the content for that component. So towards that end, we are more than happy to have people who are interested in providing content, either in terms of creating new content, refining or reviewing the existing content, or more importantly as well, creating assessments for this content, because that's one of the key things needed for courses as well. Because for the workshops, we can be informal about how the review process and the assessment happens, but there needed to be a regular weekly update during the course of creating weekly exercises and quizzes, and having a good created pool of questions would really help towards that end. And so if you're interested, again, please do reach out to me on Discord. I'd be more than happy to have that conversation, or in general within Q Education. And so what's the end goal that I'll leave you with? So this would be, if successfully done, would be a completely free online offering of an introductory course on quantum computing. There's no reason why, if this is successful, we can't kind of scale it up to more additional courses in quantum computing and related areas, such that after a couple of years, we have a concentrated core set of courses that would amount to a full-fledged degree in quantum computing. Naturally, this requires way, way more work. And there are challenges as well that we probably can't even foresee. If you're interested in this, again, happy to have a conversation, happy to receive questions on that from you as well. And with that, I'll finish by thanking the team that was involved in the offering of the first Q course. Thank you to everyone. The work from everyone was really needed to make it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Jibran. So, any question? You can write as a comment. I have one question, Jibran. So we aim to have this graduate program. Also, Oxana mentioned this like virtual institute, like a much bigger scale of it. Also, we have this, I mean, everybody wants, we read from USA, etc. Everybody wants to do similar stuff. I mean, what is preventing us, or what is the main challenge? It looks like straightforward process, so it should be easily done. But why it's not coming so easily? What do you think about the challenges?
So I think it's exactly the same thing as, so there are multiple levels of challenge, and there might be other issues as well. So for example, if anyone wants to learn programming today, there's lots of free material out there, but not everyone is doing it, right? So there's one part of the challenge where even if everything was done and available, people won't necessarily use it just because it's there. From the creation part, I think the challenge near and dear to QWorld is creation of content, right? So right now, I don't think we can go out and say there is good self-explanatory content available for all, for material enough for an online degree in or for a degree in quantum computing. Yes, we've got a good course, but that's it. You know, if people wanted to do more stuff, then that's not available. And I think part of it also boils down to access to resources in terms of hardware. If anyone is going to be interested in hardware, then access to just some credits for free online is not enough, right? There needs to be a better kind of way through which someone who's actually interested and is committed in doing the work is able to actually use quantum hardware, let's say.
Okay, thank you. So if
Thank
you have
you very
any
much.
if you have any questions, you can also ask in Discord later. So thanks again, Jibran.
Thank you. Bye.